Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the April 2nd, 2019 Planning and Public Works Committee meeting. If you would please, Becky, call the roll.
Commissioner Blair?
Here.
Commissioner Dodd?
Here.
Commissioner Jernigan?
Here.
Commissioner Piercy?
Here.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner Rather?
Here.
Commissioner Cush?
Here. So we have a full house, and that is because I would like to welcome the new commissioner, Mr. Wayne Blair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome to your Public Works Committee meeting. And now I'd like to call on our vice chair for the approval of the minutes.
I've looked over the minutes and I move for their approval.
Second.
And we have a second. All in favor of that motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. All right, let's move right into the Highway Department report. And we have a couple of items under their agenda.
Good evening, everyone. A couple of things for you tonight. My budget, but I would like to start with drainage easement approval. We sent this through the road board Monday morning, and they approved it with no problems. And this is just a little, it's a temporary construction easement to move some water away from some people's house to direct it around their house. So we'll move in, do the work, and then move out and turn it back over to them. It's actually their yard, but it's coming out of a roadside ditch that doesn't have a very good back slope, and there's just nowhere for it to drain to. So we're going to move in and take care of it for them, and then they'll manage it going forward.
The homeowner and the adjoining property, everybody approves?
They requested it.
I'll make a motion to approve this.
Second.
All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. Next on the list.
Thing number 2 would be our annual operating budget. I believe that you'll see a budget summary and a personnel summary, and then a expenditure report and or expenditure worksheet and a revenue worksheet. We're really excited to turn in a balanced budget, and it's very similar to the budget last year, with the exception of some state aid work that we did to actually build a bridge. So that's a lot of the difference that you see there. If anybody has any specific questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them.
Personnel, you've got the same balance as you did last year?
We're adding three positions.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I see it now. All right. Okay.
Are you losing anyone to retirement?
Hope not. We're having a hard time replacing people. There's just there's a lot of the unemployment rate around here doesn't lend very well to doing a lot of hiring. So make no mistake, we have some folks that could retire. They're certainly qualified. Yeah. And they have their time in, and they're of age, but they choose to keep working.
I'm sorry, was that, did you have a motion to approve? All right. We have a motion to approve the budget for 2019 and 2020. We need a second.
Second.
We have a second. Is there any more discussion on that? And it looks like this was also approved unanimously by the road board.
That's correct.
All right. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, this will move on. Mr. Brooks, what else do you have?
That's all I have tonight.
All right. Mr. Dodd, now would be a good time to bring
Yes,
up
sir.
your...
If I may ask that we suspend the rules for a moment and add a topic to highway.
Sure.
And if our engineer and planning director could join us, please.
Absolutely not. Leave, I'm going with
So, thanks for bearing with me. So, committee, I took liberty of adding a conversation about roadway improvements on the Public Works agenda. This was spurred by a conversation we had it started in Health and Ed. I was not present, but the conversation started and it came over to budget. When we acquired new land for schools this year, the biggest topic on the property out of Christiana was inadequate roadways. And it just about turned, the purchase almost went sideways, I think, because there's a legitimate concern that we're putting students and a lot of activity on the property that's several miles from a main road. And I don't think we can accomplish much tonight, but I think it's incumbent upon us with the skill sets we have in this room, with the professionals we have on staff, and frankly, the myriad skills that this committee has, and we start a conversation about can we in some way undertake road building, whether it be in-house or we undertake letting road jobs, paying to have jobs designed, let out for bid and managed. Can we fund it in some way that the government could perhaps fund a road improvement at a school and that gets paid back by some vehicle that we have not utilized yet, a traffic assessment district like a sewer department does, or some fees to developers. I don't know. So if that's sufficient to start a conversation, where do we go from here? Have you guys ever heard of a public-private relationship in roadways in other counties or states? So that I just want to get that on the table. Where we go from here, it could be part of our agenda monthly. But I think, I just don't want it to get extraneous. It just needs to be Public Works and these departments, in my opinion.
Before you guys chime in, Commissioner Dodd, we, on the Planning Commission, which I have been a long time member, this discussion comes up from time to time, not necessarily with schools, but with just development in general. We have even had the city of Murfreesboro, Sam Huddleston, at one time, I believe it was last year, 2018, came and spoke to us on our committee's request to learn more about how the city does with private development. They actually have a kind of an escrow type of an account in which a developer on the frontage property, and you guys correct me if I misspeak, on the frontage of property, the developer has to put in some money to help improve the roadway, and then the city also puts in funds, and then that, when it's time then to repave or rework that roadway, some of that developer money then is used to improve that roadway. That is something we haven't pursued, but that is something we have chatted about. We in planning are to the point, because of this extreme amount of growth the last 24 months, and really no let up in sight that we can see downfield. And the fact that we see a lot of subdivisions, as good land is being purchased, it's already been purchased, and now the boundaries are pushed out even farther, and schools are pushed out even farther. We see the infrastructure issue is even a bigger problem than it was 2 years ago. So how do we get people safely from point A to point B? We can't, as a county, we just can't afford to do that. So we're going to have to do something, and this is a good timely awakening that we all saw at full commission on this Christiana deal. And it's also high time that the school board and the planning commission sit down on a regular basis and communicate with one another about what their long-term strategy is for schools, so we can be better prepared and not be surprised when a Christiana comes up and they expect us to pony up the dough to A, purchase the land, and then B, make it safe to get there. So that's going to have to change. That communication level is going to have to be much better. So that being said, I wanted to give you a little background on what the Planning Commission's feelings have been in the past, and that we're trying to scratch our heads as well and trying to find a fair and equitable way to get some of that private money, and what we can. From what will the state allow us to do? You know, we have certain restrictions as far as fees that we can or cannot impose, and that's always been a headache too. But I've said enough. I'll let the experts on engineering and planning open it up from here.
Well, Chairman Cush, we looked at developing a traffic shed analysis of the county roads. Was it a year and a half ago?
Yeah, about 2 years ago.
2 years ago, and that kind of fell to the wayside. It was a lot of discussion about that, and we just couldn't carry that forward. But on each project that we look at on an individual basis, we do look at developments along the frontage of the roads. We do ask them, any developer that comes to us, ask them to look at a transportation study, traffic study, look at several intersections around the site. But historically, we have not been involved on the school planning and review. So this is new to us, and we're hoping to move this ahead and move forward. But
something I think that would really help in the long run for looking at what we want to accomplish, and I know we've talked about this a little bit in our budget, is something we've wanted to do as staff over the last couple of years is take a look at our major thoroughfare plan, our long-range transportation plan. It's really the same thing. The last time we had a comprehensive redo of that was back in 2004. There was a small amendment made to ours back in 2006 that basically to coordinate it with the city's Murfreesboro's plan. But since that time, our plan is pretty much sat on. It's basically sat the way that it is. Long-range plans like that, you try to update every at least 5 years or so. Maybe, you know, it varies a little bit, but if you think of it now, you know, it's been about 15 years since the last time that we've done a comprehensive redo of that. Quite frankly, the last time it was done, it wasn't completed. And I won't get into the story as to why, but what we have is a map. You know, if you look at the city's plan, they have all the documentation that goes with it. All we ever had was a map. So we need something like that.
What kind of documentation?
As far as
Consultant reports?
well, yeah, consultant reports, the start and where the particular road ended, potential, you know, preliminary costs, scope of work, those kind of things. All we have is a map that kind of says, okay, this is going to be 5 lane, this is going to be a 3 lane, this is going to be a wider 2 lane than it is right now. I mean, ultimately, the reason's not important as to why that happened, but the fact of the matter is we've got what we've got. And several years ago, when we updated when we created rather, because we didn't have on our comprehensive plan, we didn't look too close at transportation at the time because really it was more land use focused. But in a perfect world, you want land use and transportation to jive. You know, you don't want to start recommending land use and increases in density in areas where the roads can't handle it, so they need to work in tandem with each other. So as part of our budget, as you recall, you know, we've got money set aside to hopefully begin that process where we can get a consultant on board that would update the comprehensive plan, which again, that's 2011, last time when we updated that, when we created it and adopted it. And then the transportation plan, that way those could be coordinated, like the zoning and the comprehensive plan are now. So that's ultimately what we'd like to do. But I think as part of that, that goes back to what you were saying as far as schools and everything is concerned, getting them at the table, finding out where they're looking for schools, where potential road improvements may have to be done. All that can be brought in to that document, and we want them to be involved in that. And we've even told them that, you know, since we met with them a few weeks ago with Mr. Lee. That's what I think is a good starting point. At least start that, and as part of the plan, depending on how it's structured, you might be able to look at potential funding options. You know, obviously, a lot of this is going to be public funded. There are potential, I think, for some of the things that were discussed as far as you know, escrow of funds and things, which I think works better if we have a campaign going where we are going to be doing our own road improvements. You know, it's one thing to require that, but if it's going to do is sit in an account somewhere because we're not building any roads, what's the point? So there are options. It's just a matter of finding out. And I mean, Mr. Cush makes a good point. What can we legally do when it comes to instituting new fees and, like you were talking about, traffic assessment zones and things like that? You know, our hands are going to be tied to a certain extent. So as a county, so we need to look at all that. And a long-range plan and the long-range transportation plan can help bear some of that out.
I agree that a long-range transportation plan and communication between planning, engineering, highway department, and the school board is critical. However, that is a little further out than we have right now. That needs to happen. That needs to start. And I can see it, in my mind, I can see it benefiting both parties. You know, a public-private relationship and benefiting, you know, the private sector as much as it does the public sector, because it's going to improve the roads, not just at their site, but leading to their site. So I can see that being beneficial. However, currently, we are talking about putting a school online in the fall of 2021. So this first initial round of road improvements has to happen prior to that school being populated, in my opinion. And I think if you would ride out there and take a look around, you would certainly agree. It's not something that we can wait until we figure out how we're going to fund it. Moving forward, yes, we need to have some funding already in place. But right now, we're under the gun. We have to get something moving quickly. At least the first round of road improvements. And by that I mean, it's kind of twofold. The first round, and to me, the first round is, first of all, they're going to build an elementary school out there. It's going to be a 3-school campus eventually. But day one, when they open up, it's going to be an elementary school. So the first round would be, for ease of conversation, let's just say that we take the location of that school and put a radius around it, extend a radius around it, where we know there's going to be a very intense increase in traffic. That's the first round. Those roads have to be improved immediately. So now round two, we might have enough time to get an engineering firm involved. This is not something that can be done in-house. This is something that TDOT doesn't even do in-house. I mean, this is something that they would have to, you know, you would farm it out to an engineering firm. They would do an environmental, survey, bore test, all kinds of things have to go on to be able to put this thing out for bid. You have to have more information than we're going to have when we start these round one improvements to make a competitive bid. So maybe round two could be a competitive bid process if we have some things in place in time, you know, possibly. But round one has to start now, immediately. We're talking about miles of roads, you know, probably probably 8 miles of road that have to be improved, significantly improved. Not just minor improvements,
Widened, shoulders added.
but significant improvements. Improvements that are going to require right-of-way acquisition. All that has to start right now if we're going to have anything in place by the time this school opens, if it stays on track like it is right now. And I believe it will. I have no reason not to believe it will. So, all that being said, what I'm suggesting is the highway department provide as much of the labor as possible to make these improvements. Some of this stuff will still have to be contracted out. There's a bridge that's going to have to be expanded. It's not a big span bridge, it's a kind of a box bridge, but you know, that's the kind of stuff we need to contract out. But the highway department start making the improvements that they're capable of making and try to set up some type of, and we furnish the, you know, the labor and the equipment to do those improvements. As we can, we still have our normal day-to-day duties that have to be taken care of. But the material, if there's some way that there could be, if money could be found somewhere to buy the material, then County General could piggyback off of our current vendors, material vendors, for pipe, base stone, asphalt, you know, all that kind of thing. And then we furnish the material and County General pays for the material on this first round of improvements. I don't see another way. Mary has gone to a lot of trouble to try to figure out where that money would live, you know, in County General's budget. But that's a discussion that, you know, her and Lisa, and, you know, obviously Mayor Kettman would need to be involved in, and myself. But that's a suggestion for the first round of improvements. Now, moving forward, we have to know about this stuff in advance. I mean, it's, you know, it's not possible for us to do this kind of due diligence in 30 days, come up with numbers and, you know, and what improvements need to happen. I mean, we're a little behind on this one. So I still hadn't, you know, the bottom line, excuse me just a minute, Mr. Dodd. Mr. Dodd, the bottom line is the same as it always is. Where's the money going to come from? Now we're volunteering to furnish the labor and the equipment, but where's the material cost going to come from? Wish I had an answer, but I don't.
Yeah, you've got a $7 million budget upcoming with $3,200,000 in asphalt, for instance. That asphalt's already been predetermined as maintenance on your 9 miles of road, or whatever you have now.
Correct.
So if we look at this is
Correct.
assumed
That's our
years planned.
That's correct. That's our annual operating
Do you have any
target.
flexibility? Can you prioritize, you know, a radius around the school is step one, but perhaps in that radius, there's only 2 prongs that get attention. You know, could one of those prongs supersede something? That may be too specific for this conversation. Those are the kind of things we're going to have to.
it would mean not doing something that needs done.
Correct.
Let me, without getting too far off, let me kind of explain. With the money that you're talking about, with our annual operating budget, our material costs for our asphalt that you're talking about there at 3.2. Currently, we can repave approximately 45 miles of road annually. So we have 960, 970 miles of road. 2/3 of that is probably rural county roads. The other part is probably subdivisions. So if we are successful in achieving 45 miles of resurfacing annually, then we can put our road system on about a 15-year cycle, because subdivisions are not going to need attention every 15 years. Typically, not all of them. So if we put things on a 15-year cycle with the money we have now, we can maintain what we have and hopefully make a few improvements along the way. So I don't think that this money to do this extensive of road projects currently is living in our budget.
Will there not also have to be a considerable amount of money spent on
Right-of-way
land,
acquisition?
right-of-way?
Absolutely.
Also,
And that's to be determined also. We're still trying to come up, we are still trying to come up with a conceptual plan of just what that would look like.
Yeah.
You know, with the turn lane improvements and the storage, and it's
Do all roadway
complicated.
improvements require easements?
in the county. Those rural
Most of your
roads.
right-of-ways?
Are prescriptive.
Are prescriptive, yes. A lot of the deeds go to the center line of the road.
Mr. Chairman, a couple of questions. The school board revisits its 5-year building plan each year. Is that not shared with anybody?
But I was on Health and Ed previously, and it was shared regularly
Just with Health Ed?
with Health and Ed, but not with specifics, and not with, it's like land in a year, land in, 10 schools, or 5 schools in the next 10 years. It was
I
more
mean, that's
generic
their
at our
wish
level.
list, but it's,
We see the 5-year wish list, and it may say what quadrant of the county to some extent, theoretically, but it doesn't get to Greg.
Well, these,
But 2 or 3 of those different locations that they may identify, say in Christiana, they never have come to planning, and they have never come to
highway department.
Greg and say, let's look at these 2 or 3 different options we're looking at. Which one, in your opinion, would be cheaper? Right?
That's correct.
Well,
That's correct.
and my second question would be, I've been on those roads. I helped look at that property at that time. I'm trying, in my mind, and I'm not a professional like yourself, what is the difference in those roads there and roads like Baker Road in front of Brown's Chapel, Rocky Fork in front of the elementary and middle school, Morton Road, and Poplarwood near Stewart's Creek High School? They all seem narrow to me, and they all seem to have ditches on each side. So what is the difference in those roads out there than the roads we already have in front of these other schools?
Well, that's a legitimate question. The roads in this particular area, and that's part of the reason we're having this conversation, the improvements are more intense than Baker Road started out, quite honestly, a much better road than, say, Sledge Road or Plainview Road, Rocky Fork even, but they're more narrow. They have no shoulder, and it's straight off into a ditch.
A drop-off, yeah.
A drop-off, and so it's just,
And no right-of-way.
the intensity of the improvements would be more significant in this area. And I think that's kind of why we're having this conversation, because anytime that there's a new school, whether it be a single school or an actual campus, there are going to need to be road improvements made, no question about that, because the traffic is different. You know, we have school buses and we have teenage drivers, and so there's going to need to be road improvements made at any site. But Baker Road, for instance, I mean, we went out a couple winters ago, it's been 3 now, we put shoulders on Old Nashville Highway, Baker Road, a large section of Blackman Road, and did a state aid project that encompassed Rocky Fork, Campbell, and part of Rocky Fork, from Rocky Fork, Campbell to the county line, Wilson County. So, and those road improvements were made, you know, knowing that, is it Browns Chapel?
Yeah.
Lost for a second there. Browns Chapel School, you know, they needed some help out there. And then Morton Road, you mentioned Morton Road. Those road improvements were made by the city of Smyrna on the section from the highway to the I guess the back entrance it would have, the Red Hall
Parkway.
That was a city of Smyrna project because of the school.
Bridge widening too.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
And then after you leave the city limits and go on around to Rocky Fork,
Yes.
that section of Morton Road at that time was still in the county's road book. So we went out and made some significant improvements to our portion of Morton Road as well, because we knew that, I mean, the elementary school and the middle school already existed at that point, and we knew that high school was coming online. So the summer before the high school came online in the fall, we made some really significant some line and grade improvements on that section of Morton Road that still existed in the county's road book at that time. So which gets back to something I said at the commission meeting. These road improvements are already going on. They're already going on. Now the intensity in Christiana is going to be greater because you're starting out with less. You have less to start with. But one of the reasons this conversation seems so hard to figure out what the answers are is because we never had this conversation before. We've been building schools, but we haven't been making any concessions outside of just normal activity of the highway department about how we're going to get people there safely. So this is kind of the first, conversation, and I think that's why the intensity level seems as high as it is as far as conversation. Now, the intensity level of the road work that needs done is because of what we're starting out with out there. There's no doubt about the fact that we need some new schools. I mean, you see portables sitting around, and that's a tell. That's a tell that we need some new schools. I know I wouldn't want my child to go to school in brick and mortar, not in a trailer.
Thoughts on next best action step between now and our next month's meeting? Is there any action steps off the cuff? And I think we've put 30 minutes into this unannounced. Whether the action step is meet again next month, or do we meet interim, a bi-monthly meeting on this topic? I don't want to volunteer anybody for that, but thoughts on that next action step?
Well, it sounds like the action to be determined is, can we buy materials off the...
And how are we going to pay for the right-of-way?
Yeah. And that's going to have to be, we have to drag the mayor into that conversation as to how do we create that funding, or where is that funding? And can we, is there funding out there that we can rob Peter to pay Paul at this point? I don't know. I don't have the answer.
And unfortunately, because we're coming into the conversation late, we don't know how much money we're talking about yet.
Yeah.
We don't know how much property we're talking about, how much material we're talking about. We have some ideas,
Yeah.
some rough estimates based on, a first look, but
Yeah.
I'm working on that, but it's just going to take a while.
Yeah.
A lot of things to consider.
Does this, you think this needs to continue discussion in our planning, or just needs to stay here in public works?
I mean, it's all kind of interrelated,
Yeah.
quite frankly. I mean, I think the conversation here is good,
Yeah.
but I think Planning Commission, I mean, like you said at the beginning.
We can approve funds.
Right, it's not just the schools that we're talking about. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
right.
that's kind of the problem that's in front of us right now as far as how we're going
Right.
to handle the road. And I agree with Greg completely that, that's kind of step one.
Right.
But we also, and Greg agreed, a longer range plan is needed.
So we
Longer
don't
range
get
vision.
caught in this conversation.
Exactly.
Again.
Yeah, okay. Well, we need to have this conversation, stay in Public Works, because this committee has the ability to approve funds when we have funds to approve. So we'll put this again on the agenda for next month. But in the meantime, Commissioner Dodd, what can we do in the next 4 weeks to fine tune this conversation and come up with an action item or two? Who can we chat with to figure out what the next step is? Do we need an engineering firm to help with right-of-way acquisition, or can that be done in-house? Or who can stake?
Would Mr. Jay Bradley please stand up?
I have one suggestion.
We already have him. I'm already working with ELI, trying to develop a conceptual plan of what this looks like. Once we have that, then we have a pretty good understanding of what right-of-ways would have to be acquired
Okay.
to put in the road system, the immediate road system that needs to happen before the school opens.
Yeah.
So we're moving along on that. That part's already underway, funded by the Highway Department.
On budget, we had a lengthy discussion on this. You were there.
Yes, sir.
What you're talking about tonight is that the best estimate I got from a main highway was 6 mile either way. Are you looking at doing 6 miles both way or just one way to start with?
Well, what I'm looking at to start with is, like I said, if you had a map, a county map, and you located that school on that county map, and you kind of put a radius around it, that does not get back to a highway. It gets back close to a highway, but it doesn't get all the way to the highway. It's just the road improvements in the immediate area. But it's not really 6 miles to a highway. It's about 3.5 either direction. It's kind of a 6 mile overall stretch.
You must went and looked.
So it's really about 3.5 miles. But since that conversation, I've been given information about what the zoning would look like for that school. So I know more about where the children would be coming from that would be attending this school. So that helps a lot. Obviously, I didn't have that day one. So
Are they coming from one direction or multiple directions?
they're coming from multiple directions,
Right.
but it still narrows down the area that I need to concentrate on.
I would just ask that we consider of that radius. It's a great idea, it's a logical idea. Of that radius, there may only be one route that becomes priority. I want to nibble at it instead of choking on the whole thing. I just want to, as we consider it, we got to keep coming back to what can we do first. If your radius has 9 miles of road, and maybe we're just going to have to tackle 3. And some of the traffic may have to route towards that.
I understand your logic. However, I think the suggestions that I have made and the part of this project that I'm working on, I think that's the minimum we can get by with.
Is your footprint. 360 degrees.
I don't think that can be trimmed anymore. I think that's the minimum we can do before day one.
When do you have that plan sketched on a bar napkin, will you bring it to us? Review.
It's actually the back of a grocery sack.
A little bigger.
More. Yeah, it's larger.
Paper.
Paper, yeah, we don't like plastic. Yeah.
And one last question, Mr. Blair, does the school board ever have ending fund balances that could be reallocated towards material and the general budget?
Well, during my time there, most of the ending school fund balanced the budget. So many percentage points were taken at the end of the year. And by state law, you have to have a certain amount that stays there. So that excess has been used over the years to actually balance the school board's budget.
So going forward, is the clean way when you bid a school to bid the infrastructure package in the total cost of the school?
We have to contribute 10% of our bond to the city school system. We're trying to avoid that.
That's right. That's right.
That's just a tremendous amount of cash flow out of the county coffers.
Is there a way to amend that where you can take the infrastructure out of that bond?
That's why I wondered if a fund balance that's not bonded towards that school, could the fund balance be redirected?
If it's used towards an elementary school or 6th grade, state law.
If it's bond, if it's borrowed money, if it's bonded, if we go to the bond market and borrow towards a school, we have
Maintenance of effort still kicks in.
that.
Yeah.
So that, I asked the same question at budget last week, or last month.
All right. We got to figure out ways to get that kept.
I'm thinking out of the school system. We don't have to share the maintenance of effort.
That's why the school system said that it would be better not to be part of their package because they have to share.
But to answer your question, you know, it was a specific question. The answer is yes. As soon as I get a conceptual plan,
Yes.
I'll bring it.
Okay. All right.
Did I say?
You want to continue this conversation next month? Put it on the.
Yes, please, with the approval of this committee and these gentlemen.
Okay. Is that okay with you guys?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what we'll have
Let's do it.
between now and then. Yes,
Before
ma'am.
we end,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
like I said, Mary's been working on how this thing could kind of piggyback on our vending, on our vendors that we have in place. So you want to maybe touch on that?
Well, a lot of the contracts that we bid, the stone, the hot mix and everything, there's already a clause in there. Other Rutherford County government entities can use it. In looking through the fund and the object codes and stuff that is used in the county, the way I like it to see it is to make the money very open and transparent where everybody can see it, instead of putting it in someone's budget like planning in county general or, you know, wherever. There is a way, and it would be something that like Lisa and I and Greg and the mayor would look at. There are account numbers that can be used, in my personal opinion, if you find the funding, you put them in these expenditure accounts. There are objective line items that you would take, the stone, the hot mix, the concrete, the right-of-way. Those can all be allocated and you can see. And so the best case scenario is when Greg was saying we would supply the labor, y'all supply the materials, it would be as simple as like we are doing now. We are collecting the tickets every day. I have to account for that money on our end. So I would take the tickets, account for the money, and send the bill to Lisa or whoever she would deem, and y'all would see it coming out of a specific account number. Instead of it being hid in planning's budget or anybody else's, it would be not a fund of its own. It would be an account of its own under the 101 county government or county general fund, and you could see the materials. You could see them come.
Every dollar
and
can be tracked.
And we can track it, and you would see, okay, we didn't use much stone, so let's take that money next year, and you would have it like that instead of, you know, like, could we use our 3.2 million to do it? That's not fair on the 45 miles that we try to do every year, which is countywide, not.
Which is not possible.
And so I would think that in looking at it, in my personal opinion, as for doing the bookkeeping, and I've done it for a while, if you can clean it up and make it one account, and this is our school, not school road, but schools, road improvement fund account, and you could see where it's coming and going, and then everybody your commissioners and the public, when they look at the budget, they're like, okay, so some of my money is going into this account, and the schools at Christiana got improved. The schools over towards Baker and out toward Rockville have all been improved, and there's where that money's at. And it's not hid in planning, trying to do a major thoroughfare plan out of theirs. It's not cutting into what somebody else is already having to have. You would have a account of its own with
Very
all the...
specific.
Yes. And then
For
that
this
way,
project.
maybe when you ask the question to the state, you say, this is an account set up that I'm assuming the 21 commissioners would have to set the account up specifically for this. And then we would know next year, well, we've only got this X dollars in there, so we gotta, yeah, that's just a
Or
thought.
we could at least budget the fund. We could start budgeting the fund for the
Right.
2021.
And it's easy, it really is easy to keep up with, because if we're gonna do the labor, the guys know how we do it at my, I was thinking it was at my house, at my work. It's like at my house. Yeah, so, but
Yeah.
as you're looking at it, and it may be as you ask the state, what can we do? If you tell them that it is an account of its own, going to be specifically only for this, maybe the money could be a little different than it might get shared with somebody else. Just a thought.
Very good.
Yeah, I've been there 6 years. I think we've never lost a ticket. So when she says she collects the tickets, she means all of them, doesn't she, Mr. Manning?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
So we can watch every dollar. I can account for every penny. So I think that'd be a good way to do it. And that might be a little more palatable to who we're going to sell this thing to.
Yeah. Okay. We'll chat about this again. Very good.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Thank you all for your
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Mayor.
Doug, you guys might want to just stay, building codes? Okay. Yeah,
I'll see you in a minute.
This is for all those times you made me sit in here, Mike.
All right, Tanya.
Good evening. Mine is going to be wee buttons compared to that. All right. So we'll do building inspections first. We did a total of 291 building permits in the month of March. 67 of those were single-family dwellings, up a little bit from February, for a total of 109,167. We also did 745 electrical permits. We did 1,255 inspections with a little over 7,600 miles driven in the month of March. And I'd be happy to answer any questions before going on to development tax.
Take these several. Can we put them all together?
I think we can put them all together.
Okay. All right. We'll continue on.
So development tax, for the month of March, we collected $296,250. And then zoning inspections, we had a total of, your sheet says 129, but we had a report that wasn't reported, so it's actually 146 inspections for the month of March.
$296, $250. Development tax, that was the total.
Yeah, 296,
Yep.
250 for March.
Yep, and the
Half of
cumulative.
last year and a third of 2 years ago. Am I seeing that right?
Yep.
459 and some.
We have a cumulative total this year of 4.2 million, almost 4.3. This time last year, we were at 3.5.
Okay.
So we're up a little bit from
So the
last year.
months,
Right.
Departments hit or whatever.
And we're getting ready to hit spring and summer, so I expect that to be at or above what we got collected last year.
Any other questions? else do you have, Tanya, before we make a motion? Is that-
I have nothing else.
Okay. We need to make a motion to approve those reports.
Want to approve?
Okay, we have a
Second.
and in a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Tanya.
I have one item that's not on the agenda, and I'll get to it in just a second. But last month, we discussed, if you'll remember, we discussed the amended resolution to govern the Board of Adjustments and Appeals.
Yes.
And we all agreed on that. However, we didn't make a motion to move it forward to the full commission.
Okay.
So we need to do that, if
All
that's
right.
okay.
You guys remember that we're adding stormwater and any other particular topics that come up to the...
Right, some local ordinances,
Yeah.
our noise, and some local ordinances
Yeah.
that we don't have.
Right. That committee, like you said, maybe meets once or twice a year.
Right.
As
Well, the
needed.
resolution says they will meet once a month, but if they're not needed, they will not meet.
Right.
So only as needed, basically.
Okay. So we need a motion to send that to full commission.
Make a motion to approve.
And a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Aye. Very good. And then,
All right, so the last thing I have is, if you will all remember, in December, building codes took over the issuance of state electrical permits. When I came to you in December with an estimated number of permits and revenue that we would collect through this, I asked for a part-time position to help alleviate some of the extra work that our permit techs would take on. It turns out that our numbers were a whole lot higher than we originally anticipated. The way we issued the electrical permits and the way the issue agent was doing it prior to me were a little bit different. She was clumping a lot of the inspections into one permit and therefore only collecting on one permit for 4 or 5 different inspections. We are doing them all separately. So every time there's an inspection, a permit issued, we collect on that. And the reason we do that is because we have the electricians call us to request an inspection. That way we can keep track of the electrical inspections as they apply to our building inspections. We really have to track. We can't release our building inspections before an electrical inspection has been done. So it allows us to track when the inspection was called in, who it was called into, if it's been done, et cetera, et cetera. So the permits that we've issued were, we issued 729 in December, 649 in January, 574 in February, and 745 in March. While the electrical permits only take a couple of minutes to issue versus a building permit that takes about 10 or 15 minutes to issue, certainly the workload has kept our girls up front absolutely slammed. So I I calculated what revenue we would collect given the last 4 months' numbers. I averaged them out and tried to estimate what revenue we would collect over a year. I don't have the numbers of a full year to calculate, so I had to use the last 4 months that I had. And a conservative number would be about $42,000 for the year. I talked to HR to find out what it would cost us to keep our part-timer, hire our part-timer on as a full-timer. However, that number came back at about $58,000, and I don't want this to cost what I decided to do or what I set out to do to cost the county any money. So I asked Sonia what it would cost to hire another part-timer. Our part-timer is currently costing us about $16,000 a year, full, all year. So another part-timer would be about the same. However, I would try to use them seasonally at first, in spring and summer, and then when it slowed down in winter, possibly drop them off a little bit. So I guess my proposition or my request would be that I could hire a second part-timer to help alleviate some of the work, and also to allow the girls that are there to take some summer vacation. Every time they ask for time off, it really puts a load on the rest of us that are there. I do have enough in the budget to cover a second part-timer through the end of this budget year. However, I would need to amend the budget that you guys looked at last month by about, in the part-time line, by about $8,000 to $12,000. 12 being the high side, 8 being the low side, after I get permanent or definite numbers from Sonia. So my request would be that that I amend my budget part-time line item by about $8,000 to $12,000 for a second part-timer.
All right. Have a question from the mayor?
I was just going to comment, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I met with Tanya, and we felt like this was the best way to go. She does have the money in her budget. I know she was a little nervous when she asked for money, but she did a good job just now. She's very articulate when she's in my office, but when she gets in front of the TV and you all, she's fumble. So
Sorry.
I told her that she had my support to come forward, to go ahead and get the other part-time, since she has it in the budget, and then request an amendment for the budget for a second part-time person, as opposed to going to one full-time at the $58,000. As we have seen with planning and the need for our engineering, we have authorized, because it's exploding, we knew it was going to explode in May, and that's why we've authorized an outside firm to come in and help in engineering, because of all the tremendous growth. We knew it was going to bust wide open come March as soon as it started warming up, and so the same thing is effective here.
And can I just add too that in the 4 months that we've been issuing electrical permits, we've got positive feedback. I mean, everybody is just tickled that we are doing it and are thrilled that we haven't had any complaints about any of it. So they're really happy with. I don't know if you're hearing it on your end, are you? Probably not so much.
No complaints.
Well, that's good too.
Refresh my memory. Do you get about $5?
We get $5 per permit.
Okay.
So if the numbers, the last four months, I took an average
Yeah,
and
so you're still-
estimated the 12 months, and I'm estimating about 42,000, and that's being conservative.
So with two part-times, you're still
I'm looking at
profitable?
about 32.
You're still profitable?
Right.
Okay. All right. So we would need a motion. Yeah, we'll need a motion, then a roll call. A motion to accept that request for hiring of an additional part-time person. So moved. So moved. All right. And this will be a roll call, I believe. All right.
Who was your second?
Second.
Commissioner Rather?
Are you going to include amending 2019-20 budget?
Does it have to be, do we need to do that separately to amend the budget for your, or can it be lumped into one? Amended? Okay,
I think two different ones.
two different ones, all right. So we'll do the part-timer first. Okay. Do we need to do a roll call since we're spending money?
I wouldn't think so, but I'll be happy to.
Let's do it for fun.
Commissioner Blair?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Jernigan?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner Rather?
Yes.
Commissioner Cush?
Yes. All right, now we need a motion to amend the budget to include the costing of that additional part-time person. So I would...
That would be the 19-20 budget.
Yeah, 19-20 budget. Okay, so I would need a motion and a second.
Make a motion
We have a motion by Commissioner and a second. All right, all those in favor? Well, yeah, that's okay. All those in favor? Signify aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. That motion carries. Tanya, thank you.
Thank you very much. You guys have a good night.
All right, now Doug, you and Michael can come back.
He's talking out in the hall.
Oh, yeah, okay.
He doesn't have to come in yet.
Your pizza
Oh, there
delivery
we go.
here?
His
Okay.
part's not till the very end.
All right.
So, good evening again, Commissioners, Mayor, Deputy the Mayor, everybody here. Just got, well, honestly, I have several things to talk to you about tonight, so we'll just jump right in. The first report, and for Mr. Blair, this is really going to be more for your benefit. The first thing I usually talk about these reports is our available lot inventory. That tracks those lots that are recorded on the ground ready for building permits right now. We've been keeping a running total of that over the last several years. And then the other part of that is just looking at what subdivisions are in some part of the process right now. They've been preliminarily approved. There's a final plat that hasn't been recorded yet. That's the second part of the chart that's on here. Total available lots through The end of March of this year is 874. That's down actually from last month where it was 912, but as you can see from this time last year, it's up about 224 lots. We've had a lot of activity, obviously, coming in. I'll be approved, and Mr. Cush can speak to that certainly, with the number of plats and plans we've seen at the Planning Commission. So we're seeing more and more things being recorded, and as the building permits start picking up, I expect this number to go down. But for several years it trended down, then it kind of stabilized for a little while. It's been kind of trending up a little bit right now, but it is down from last month. So that just gives you just a rough idea of what we're looking at. And this is just for the unincorporated county area. This doesn't include any of the municipalities. So if there's no questions on that, I'll go ahead and jump into the rezoning report. The last several months, you all have enjoyed the fact that I've only had 1 or 2 rezoning hearings, and I've taken about 5-10 minutes of your time. That's coming to a screeching halt this month. Pretty much every application that I had talked to somebody about over the last 6 months came in at the same time from the Planning Commission last month. So we have actually 6 rezonings and 1 ordinance amendment to discuss with you tonight. So I'll try to work through these as quick as I can. The first is for property located along Blackman Road. This is right past Baker Road, the intersection of Baker Road and Blackman Road. The Planning Commission actually considered this back in December, where it was approved, but following the December 10th meeting, the applicant contacted me about the possibility of making some changes to the development. The development was originally looking at about 203 units. It was broken down at 145 single-family and 58 two-family attached units, so kind of like a duplex type unit is what they were looking at. After that was approved, but after the meeting, they wanted to change everything through just single-family. Now, this is a planned development application that they're talking about, so this isn't just a straight application or a straight subdivision on residentially zoned property. They were asking for a zoning change and a change to the plan. So I recommended they go back to the Planning Commission, which is why it took an extra month to get through. So their revised plan, which again was approved by the Planning Commission, shows a total of 196 single-family homes. They've eliminated the two-family product, and which is a decrease of about 7 units. Really everything else about the development was the same. The minimum lot sizes were the same, minimum house sizes remained unchanged. All of that was pretty much the same. There wasn't just a whole lot of discussion on this at the Planning Commission. There was a public hearing, and the Planning Commission did recommend approval of the application again by a unanimous vote. The second application is another planned development, and it's similar as far as how it's coming before you tonight. It's similar in what had happened. This application was actually approved also by the Planning Commission back in January. The applicant contacted staff a few days after that to discuss some possible changes. These were more changes to the road network. The total number of units actually went up about 7 lots. It was 126 and it went up to 133. Soils for the additional lots do still need to be verified, so it will never be more than 133 even if the soils are there, but it's possible it could be more like 129, 128, just depending on how the soils work out. What they are proposing is a 133 maximum unit residential development on this property. This is 61 units, which would be single-family detached. The remaining 72 units will be 4-unit attached product. And I neglected to say this, but under the planning report, there's pattern books. You'll see this one's called Saddlewood. The previous one I just talked about, Smith property, excuse me. And that's the pattern books for us if you wanted to look at that for additional information. Most of the information, or excuse me, most of the discussion on this item focused on the drainage concerns, especially in the Royal Glen subdivision, considering the recent rains that happened back in February and the issues that we were having with that. There were also some discussion on possible effects to property values. Of course, there was traffic concerns. A lot of these things were brought out in a neighborhood meeting that occurred prior to this application being submitted, as well as the Planning Commission meeting. So these things, the first Planning Commission meeting, so these things have been discussed at great length. Following the discussion of these concerns, the Planning Commission did ultimately recommend approval of this application by a vote of 10 for and 1 against. The third application is for property located along Franklin Road. This is a little further down the road from this last development we just talked about, the land venues by Jim Heisen. Russell Marino Jr. is the applicant for this particular application. They are proposing to zone this property to commercial services. And again, Mr. Blair, for your benefit, the county has 3 commercial zones, general commercial zones. One of them is commercial neighborhood, which is kind of a lighter commercial zone, more neighborhood friendly. Commercial services is kind of in the middle. Commercial general is more of a wide open zone. So what they're asking for is kind of in the middle of the road. They would like to rezone the property to relocate a landscaping company from Williamson County. There's information in your agenda packets regarding what exactly it is that they're looking for. They're only looking to do, the whole tract itself is a fairly large tract. It's about 25 acres, but they're only looking for about 4.7 acres of the frontage of this to be rezoned. So the remaining area would be zoned residential medium density. It could possibly be used for growing of material, things like that, more agricultural type activities. They did submit a concept plan, which does show access points onto Franklin Road. Since Franklin Road is a state road, TDOT approval would be required for that. They would also be required to submit an engineered site plan should this be approved, which would demonstrate parking requirements being met, landscaping, and whatnot. Again, very little discussion on this item at the Planning Commission's meeting. This area where they're asking for this, when you look at the zoning map, it has several commercially zoned properties right in this area. So even from staff standpoint, we didn't see that this was much of an issue as far as the zoning of the property was concerned. And the Planning Commission did recommend approval by a unanimous vote. The fourth application is for property located along Old Nashville Highway. This is by Mr. Chance Lewis. Information provided by Mr. Lewis states that they're seeking to rezone the property, again, to commercial services, to relocate their current property management business, which is located actually just further down the road inside the city of Murfreesboro along West College Street. They're looking to basically have more room to expand, essentially, is what they're looking for here. There's a concept plan that was included with your agenda packets with this. They're proposing a 9,600 square foot building along with parking and storage areas. The existing house and other structures would be removed as part of the redevelopment of the property. Access would be on to Old Nashville Highway, so the county highway department would be involved as far as any new or modified access points. Of course, verification of all county requirements would also be required with an engineered site plan for this, which would include landscaping, screening, those kind of things. As far as staff was concerned, there is a variety of zoning along the stretch of Old Nashville Highway. It's actually immediately adjacent to property similarly zoned commercial services. There's a mulch yard located immediately to the, I guess that'd be the southeast of this property, coming back toward town. The old LoJack property is also just to the west and across the street, which is zoned heavy industrial. There was quite a bit of discussion on this item at the Planning Commission's meeting, focused on the historical issues. This isn't that far from the battlefield. There were concerns about this property being part of the old cemetery community, and we learned something about that. There was a representative from the battlefield that kind of went through some of the history of that. There were also concerns about commercialization of this old portion of Old Nashville Highway, screening of the property, should the application be approved, those kind of things. Again, there was a lot of discussion on that. Ultimately, the Planning Commission did recommend approval, and that was by a vote of 9-4, 1 against, and 1 abstention. Moving on to the next application is for property located at the northwest corner of Joby Jackson Parkway and Butler Drive. This is by Mr. Laws Bolden. There's information in your application packets that I basically copied and pasted right from the applicant's submittal application. I'm not going to read all of that. Essentially, he has submitted a concept plan. What they're looking to do around that interchange, this is right near the Joby Jackson interchange with I-24. That property on Butler and Joby Jackson, they're essentially looking to zone that property light industrial. Their concept plan shows a variety of uses, possible mini warehouse type development, maybe some fast food, a convenience market gas station, those type of uses. Most of the discussion that we had on this really centered around the recommendations of the county's comprehensive plan and also what the city had recommended for that area. The city's comprehensive plan calls that more of a general commercial. Our comprehensive plan calls it more of a general urban. In our viewpoint, light industrial or commercial general, one of our heavier commercial classifications, does fit on this. Ultimately, the Planning Commission did recommend in favor of the light industrial zoning, which is what the applicant requested. That does give them a little more flexibility. The uses that they're proposing are all allowed in either zone. The biggest difference is that with the mini warehouses, that would have to take an extra step and go to the Board of Zoning Appeals to get a special exception, whereas in the light industrial, it's a use by right. So that was really the biggest change between the two. But after discussion, the Planning Commission was comfortable with the light industrial request and did recommend approval. Again, should this be approved, they would have to do engineered site plans for any development on the property. So we would see all that to make sure that it conformed with county regulations. The last of the rezoning applications is another residential plan development. This is for property located along Lytle Creek Road. Mr. Robert Stroop is the applicant. This is actually property that there was a subdivision approved on this many years back. Preliminary plat for what was called the Views at Lytle Creek was approved by the Planning Commission back in August of 2006. The property was at that time under our older zoning ordinance, was on what was called R15, what we call RM today. They did show a total at that time of 134 lots, 132 being residential, the other 2 being stormwater management, those kind of things. The plat, when it was approved, was extended. Their approval was extended several times, but ultimately the applicant let the project expire, and now they resubmitted as a planned development. The pattern book does show, and again, that pattern book is on your agenda pack, or the iPads, excuse me. They are showing 132 residential lots, pretty much the same yield as they were getting under the original plan that was approved. Minimum lot size is to be 10,000 square feet, which for a planned development, what we see for planned developments is actually a fairly large lot. Most of the ones we've been seeing lately have hovered around 7,500 to 8,000 square feet, so these are a little bit larger than that. Minimum house size would be 1,800 square feet. Houses are proposed to be vinyl sided. Sidewalks on the new streets, street lights were proposed. Access and parking, there was a traffic study that was submitted as part of this request. There were several recommendations, and those recommendations are inside your packets, as well as far as road improvements that would need to be made, realigning of an intersection with, I think it's Couch Road, in that area to kind of make that a little less awkward of an intersection. Most of the discussion that we saw on this was regarding the soil types and drainage on the property and the challenges that might create for development. Again, traffic improvements to Lytle Creek Road were also discussed, as well as the concerns about potential street lighting. There was also some discussion regarding possible changes to the development. On your iPads, I actually uploaded a file. It's Lytle Creek Crossing Revised Master Plan. The original plan showed several of these lots that had frontage onto Lytle Creek Road. There's a portion of these lots, if you're looking at that on the south side, lots 1 through 8, that has remained unchanged. Those all have direct access on the Lytle Creek Road. But several lots on the north-south portion of Lytle Creek Road, for instance, lots 111 through 114 had direct access on the Lytle Creek Road, and several lots like 59, 60, 61 through that area also had direct access. They have made a few changes, and this was at the direction of the Planning Commission that felt that these would be good changes. They have actually taken away some of those lots that have frontage along Lytle Creek Road as far as accessing Lytle Creek Road, like lots 111 through 114 would actually have their access off of Port Royal Drive. We wouldn't allow access off of Lytle Creek Road. That just makes for less conflict points. So after looking at this, we were fine with the proposal as it was submitted. So this is the plan. We'll get a revised pattern book from the applicant prior to the meeting, but I wanted you to at least get your eyes on the concept plan that you had in here. Ultimately, again, after discussion, the Planning Commission did recommend approval by a unanimous vote on that particular application. Those are the rezoning requests. We also have one ordinance amendment that I'll discuss briefly. Our zoning ordinance, and these are amendments to section 404A, which is our residential zoning section of the zoning ordinance. There are 2 primary zoning designations we have for residential zones. One's being RM, which is residential medium density, which is basically 3 units an acre. The other is RL, which is residential low density, which the minimum is 1 unit per acre, so 1 acre lot size. The ordinance does have provisions in the RL area for areas that may have better access to infrastructure as far as water, step system, maybe city sewer, those kind of things. If they have either public sanitary sewer or a decentralized sewer system, like a step system, with sufficient capacity, and they have adequate water for domestic service as determined by the water provider and the fire protection as by the fire chief, which is typically fire hydrants. we do allow even those areas that have a zoning of 1 unit per acre to go down to 3 units per acre. So that was something we built into the ordinance when we approved it back in 2013. The issue that we ran into is some of the bulk requirements. When you look at the chart on the last page of my report, the bulk requirements being lot width, lot area, setbacks, those kind of things. The lot width was different between RL and RM. You can see in the RL, the minimum lot width is 100 feet, and in the medium density, it's only 75 feet. What we were running into were subdivisions that qualified for the 3 units per acre, even in the RL zone, were still having to meet the same bulk requirements as far as lot width, which was never our intent. So we just clarify, what we're proposing to do is just clarify the language here. Rather than say, as it currently states, that it's basically what we're saying is rather than just lot size can be reduced to 15,000 square feet, we just say bulk regulations for the RM zone as shown in Table 1 may be used as provided, and A and B would remain the same, those things about the public sanitary or step system and the adequate water. So this really captures the intent of what we meant in the first place, as opposed to requiring even a smaller lot to still have a larger lot width. I don't foresee that causing any real problems or any changes as any development we'll see. It just makes it consistent between what they're trying to build as a 3 unit per acre, be it in the RM or the RL zone. So that change was recommended approval also by the Planning Commission by a unanimous vote. Okay, that's everything that I have, and like I said, several of these did have comments on them at the Planning Commission meeting, so it'll be a little bit longer. You'll get to see me a little longer at the meeting than what you're used to. So I'll be happy to answer any questions, and then I know Mike's got an item as well.
Is yours the engineering agreement? Okay. Any questions for Doug? All right, seeing none, we would need a motion and a second to approve his report.
So moved.
Need a second. All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
That was a thorough report.
It was.
Good job.
I hope I didn't take too long.
No,
I tried not to.
You did very well.
No, you did very well. You were very succinct, actually. A lot of information to get out.
Thank you.
All right. This may sound like you're going to get some assistance.
Well, we hope so.
Maybe, okay.
Commissioners, as you remember, and continuing on what the mayor had mentioned about the robust economy, the growth that we're experiencing, I'd also like to say that we're down 2 engineers, one in the Public Works Department, Highway Department, and one in our Stormwater Department, our engineering department. So in the meantime, while we're looking for suitable replacements, we are going to work with a consultant to allow us to get some help, some outside help, reviewing plans, reports, studies, and everything to help our departments stay up to date. And this is a master service agreement from Energy, Land, and Infrastructure, LLC. Mr. Brooks had mentioned that he is using the same firm for a master service agreement to get some help, engineering help, while he is looking for a replacement for his public works engineer. So on your iPad, you'll see under the planning and engineering report, we have a master service agreements for ELI, and it has been reviewed by our legal department back and forth a couple times to make some tweaks. But essentially, this will allow us to hire a consultant engineer and help us in our day-to-day operations, reviewing plans and other things that we need. If you remember that we made a budget amendment I believe last month on adding some funds to allow for this consultant to work for us, and this is the agreement that goes along with it. So that's what we're asking for approval to allow this to move ahead, continue to move ahead to the full commission.
Does it need to go to budget?
It would need to go to budget, I would imagine. So,
Michael, you're okay with the hourly rate
yes,
schedule?
yes, sir.
Okay.
We are.
that it's competitive?
Yes, sir.
Phase one?
Yes, sir. And most of the work, there's a breakdown on the second page under the agreement, there's a breakdown of hourly rates. And most of the hourly rates would be a project engineer at the 125 per hour. But in case we need a CAD designer or a surveyor, they have those, or a principal or senior engineer, they also have those as well. Questions?
This will be funded from your salary that you're not spending?
Well, that's an additional source if we don't find anybody in the meantime.
Temporarily,
Right, but we have, I guess, a new account, consultant account that was added to recently to allow us to hire a consultant. And if we don't find a suitable candidate or candidates to replace our missing engineers, we could transfer some money from our salary to this consultant account line item.
Any other questions for Michael?
Motion to approve.
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Rather.
So they've given some options as to how to bill this, whether it's hourly or lump sum or whatever.
It would be an hourly rate. Yes, sir, they do give those, but it would be a hourly rate as needed. I mean, it wouldn't be, in the agreement, they do list a not to exceed rate on the back page, the last page, $12,000 per month, but I don't foresee that going over that amount.
Well, so this is the agreement, but it sounds like the choice we made was the hourly billing instead of
Yes.
any of these other
Yes.
three.
Yes, sir. And
Does it say in there that that's what
yes, sir, it
the county's
does.
chosen?
It does.
I could have read it, but you could have answered it quicker than I read it or found it.
I believe it does say there, I can't put my,
Yeah, the third, fourth paragraph, hourly services will be paid by the hourly basis, not to exceed $12,000 per month.
Okay.
okay. Oh, on the back page, yes, sir.
Okay. Just clarify. Thank you for reading that.
All right, we have a motion, and we need a second.
Second.
All right, all those, this roll call.
Commissioner Blair?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Jernigan?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner Rather?
Yes.
Commissioner Cush?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Go into effect immediately?
Well, we'd have to go to the budget.
Yeah, after the
and then the full county commission. Yes, sir. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sorry.
May I?
Can I have Sonia come
Yes.
up and address?
Please.
Michael, you may have
Mike's
said.
here, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Come on, Heather.
Mike wasn't expecting this evening, but I've been researching it. Good evening, thank you for letting me come up. Just jump right into talking. Greg Brooks mentioned the economy being good and what it's doing to hiring, and we are seeing this across the county. This is the second time that I've had to come before the commission asking for permission because we are having an extremely difficult time with some of our positions. We have had an engineering position posted since the end of November, and we are now in April. In that time, Katie P. took a position in Florida, so then we were down 2 engineers. We have posted with all of the schools that have an engineering program in Alabama, Tennessee, and Kentucky. We have posted on our county website, governmentjobs.com, Indeed.com has picked up our positions, and we did not have any candidates apply. Well, we had some candidates apply, but they weren't qualified candidates. We came before the budget committee couple months ago, 2 months ago, I want to say, and requested to lift the salary, hoping that that would draw in some additional applicants. And at the time, I requested a salary range that would keep some separation between our county engineer and this position. But knowing that the budget time is coming on, I am asking permission to raise that salary again. It will put this position closer to Mike's salary, and we had discussed the moving this position to an assistant engineering position. And that does two things for us. An engineering position would be eligible for experience credit up to 5 years. An assistant director one allows experience credit up to 10, but it also brings with it some additional supervisory duties that would assist Mike in the day-to-day operations, and would also assist Greg Brooks, because as an assistant engineer could also help if he ended up getting an EIT in at the highway department, which Greg said, you know, I'm okay getting an EIT if Mike has what he needs, and that person could help develop and train my person. So we had talked about different ways to make all this happen. So what I would like to ask your permission, and I know that this will have to go before budget, but I wanted your blessing as well, because this is the board that he reports to, and to help offset some of the workload for Mike. And then knowing that during the budget process, I will be requesting that Mike's pay be increased as well to make up for the difference, because it will not leave enough separation between the two duties. So what I'm asking is that you give me permission to reclassify the engineering position to an assistant engineering director, so that we can post the job, and then to reclassify the position at a pay grade 45 instead of 41. This will now have taken this position 9 pay grade, higher than it was before, and hopefully with that increase and moving the experience credit that will come with it and our the rest of our compensation package, that we can get someone that would be interested. The other reason that I'm bringing it to you now and not during budget, this is very abnormal that we would do this. I normally wouldn't recommend it, but with the economy, we're less than 2% unemployment. So most of the people who don't have a job either don't want a job, or they want a job but they're not qualified for the positions that we have available. The other reason is schools will be graduating in May. If we don't get the posting out there before they graduate, the likelihood of us getting a candidate, even for an EIT, we would need to raise the EIT as well. To get a candidate, we might miss that opportunity, because if we wait and do it in July, everybody who graduated in May is already going to have their position. So I feel like we need to get ahead of it and be even more aggressive with what we're doing, or we're going to be struggling, and I hate that for Mike, and I don't want that for Mr. Brooks either. So that's what I'm asking, your blessing and permission, and then I'll take this before budget, but I wanted your blessing first.
You certainly have mine. Does this need to be in a form of a motion, or is this just a head nod kind of thing?
I think a head nod would be okay. I just wanted to know that I would have your support before I took it before budget, because it is abnormal to ask.
We should. Okay. Just for show of support, if nothing else. Okay. As someone in the engineering community, I can certainly attest that civil engineers are in a huge demand. I am asked every day by engineering firms if I know of anybody that they can hire. And the search is national. I mean, it used to be, Nashville used to be a community in which engineers changed jobs within Nashville. And now they are, when they seek employment, firms in Nashville, they're reaching out to Washington, New York, Maine, all over the country to find people to fill positions. It's unbelievable. And kids coming out of school are making money that is just unheard of, because the demand is there.
It's unfortunate that many of the communities around the country have excess money or have more money to offer, and they're stealing them away.
Yeah.
but they're not growing as fast as what we are. We have the demand without the money, and they have the money, and just, you know, they're going to put them on staff and try to hold out the best.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's the key. You want to get somebody that, and keep them.
Yes, sir.
That's the main thing. And the community will keep them, but the salary is what's going to hold them, anchor them here. So, Becky suggested we do need a motion, if nothing else, to show full support to the budget committee. So, as a chairman, I probably don't feel comfortable in making that motion. So,
Let me read your proposal.
proposal. Okay, sure.
Authorize changing the engineering position to assistant engineering director and change the pay grade to 45.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. We would need to make that a motion and a second.
So moved.
All right. All in. Well, we need a roll call. Yeah. We need a, since, well, budget will really be spending the money, so all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, there you go.
Okay, thank you very
Sorry,
much.
what's the pay range in that category? Does that, what is it, 45?
At this, at step 10, it'll be about 85,000, and then plus our benefits package with insurance, retirement, sick and annual, and all that, it'll put over 100, 110.
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
What if this doesn't work?
I am open to suggestions. I have spanned 3 states. I guess I should go ahead and start maybe hitting Georgia and some of the others, but we have really, my team, we have reached out, we have placed phone calls with career centers, and I am really open to suggestions, and because I feel personally responsible that I'm letting Mike and Greg down, that we've not found them an applicant. I mean, I take that very personally, that we have looked, and, you know, every week I go on it and look, and we have 4 new applicants this week, and I was excited, and yeah, no. So,
You know, it sounds real good when, I think I saw this in the paper the other day, that Davidson and Rutherford counties were the lowest unemployment rate in the state.
That's right.
And when you read that, you're kind of like, hey, we're doing pretty good. But
It's a double-edged sword.
you know, I spent,
That's right.
and my job, the requirements for the job I was looking for was for you to be able to fog a window, and you understood righty, tighty, lefty, loosey. That was it. I couldn't find anybody that, I found literally couple guys just walked in off the street, and, you know, they're gonna work until the paycheck and then they're gone. So it's hard. I've talked to other business owners in this county, even Mr. B's car wash. They have struggled to find people, and he's had to raise his pay to get people, and it's still hard. So sounds good when we have low unemployment until you're by yourself when the rains hit and you don't have any help.
right. And I've had a couple of friends that had their own businesses, and one of them had to shut their business down. They kept raising their hourly wage so that people would actually come to work, and then at some point in time, it put them upside down. And
Well, I have a relative who has an accounting degree, and she doesn't work for a firm. She's got a headhunter that hooks her up with different companies, and she'll work for them on a project for a year, and she moves somewhere else. And I'm not real familiar with corporate headhunters, but
they're going to pay her well.
uh,
They're going to pay her well. That's what they're going to do. Well, I appreciate you entertaining me, and
Good luck. I hope that works.
Yes, I hope it does too.
All right, Magnolia.
we'll see.
Good evening, how are y'all? 3 minutes.
Okay, you're on the phone.
Okay. Start out, so don't forget to do it. Household hazardous waste collection is this Saturday from 8 until noon at the City of Murfreesboro's mulch facility, 4765 Florence Road. Their grinder burned, so they've got a big pile of mulch, but it will actually be in the backside where all the garages, so that if you go Singer Road, go in that direction, is where they'll hold that. Our landfill normally opens one Saturday a month, third Saturday of each month.
Excuse me, Mac.
Yes, sir.
Since we're on TV, could you maybe mention what all is accepted as hazardous waste?
Yes.
Let's pick up.
Thank you for that. No paints and no electronics. We collect electronics at 1140 Haley Road 5 days a week. Oil-based paint by appointment only. And if you have latex paint, you need to dry that yourself. Well, latex paint is not harmful. It's just a liquid form the landfill can't accept. Once it's dry, leave the lids off again, allow those to dry out as well. All of it can be regular trash. Oil-based, you need to call us. We'll set you up an appointment to bring that.
Put the kitty litter in.
You can do that as well. What we did at home is we had a lot of paint cans, varying levels, laid out a piece of plastic, open the paint up and stir it just like you're going to use it, pour it out in a thin layer on that plastic, and it'll dry just as quickly on that as it will in your paint roller pan when you walk away too long. Sure. And then just keep adding layers and you get rid of it that way. Now what will be accepted is spray can. That's not considered paint, it's aerosol. And then household cleaners, pool chemicals, fertilizers, automotive fluids, all those type of things that you're hard to get rid of. Thank you for reminding me on that. Our landfill normally opens the third Saturday of each month from April through October. The third Saturday of this month is Easter weekend. I really don't want my people to have to work that weekend. So it's all right, we'll just open May through October. The other thing that we looked at the numbers from last year, we didn't have any customers on any Saturday last year after 1 o'clock. So what I want to do is track the numbers of how many actual customers we have, and it may not be worth opening. It's really not worth opening, but it's an advantage to some of the residents. So this is something that we'll have to talk about next year after we finish in October to just kind of see what we've had. Of course, you can see the landfill's been kind of slow. All we're accepting out there is brush and off the rim tires. No commercial demolition stuff anymore. Any landfill questions? We'll move along to the convenience center, recycling centers. Remember, we talked about Smash It, the company that would come in and smash down the loads. The last 3 weekends in a row, we've had to use those. We've been shorthanded since right after Christmas. Had one retired first week of January, had one quit that same week. I've got another driver that's arthritis really bad. He's working on trying to get retirement, so he's out, and we've had some sicknesses. So Smash has helped us a lot. And when we did it, not this past weekend, but the weekend before, I wanted to run some numbers just to see what it would look like. So he smashed 30 loads. So I looked at where those 30 loads were and how long it takes us, and when the landfill is running right, how long to haul those. It costs us $103 an hour to haul. So if we had hauled those 30 loads without any problems, it would have taken us 54 truck hours to haul those 30 loads. At $103 an hour is $5,562. It cost us $1,200 for him to smash those. And this past weekend, spring break, end of spring break, we're always busy. Of course, we're short-handed. So I called him on Friday night and said, "You willing to work tomorrow?" "Yeah, what you got?" So I sent him after 13 loads that I knew that we had starting out Saturday morning, and 2 of those were actually metal loads, and we weren't going to be able to haul them. So for him to come in on Saturday, that would get us through the day Saturday. And then Saturday night I came in again and looked and had him haul, or had him come smash 33 more. Some of those were the ones that we'd already smashed on Saturday. So his business model is smash, fill, smash again, and then haul it. So we actually got to experience that. So that worked out well for us. I didn't run the math on that, but it's on for us what the trucking cost would have been. But that's 102 loads in the past 3 weeks, and it cost us $4,080 to have those things smashed. With us being shorthanded, that's probably going to be what we're going to do until we can get some replacements. I do have some applications on my desk though for drivers, so we're good there. Don't have very many for center attendants. We're short on center attendants as well. But that operation has worked, and our loads are a lot better. Our normal loads, because we're hauling a lot of air, is somewhere between 1.5 and 1.7 tons. Some of the loads that we hauled last week that had been smashed only once was running 4 tons. So I'm anxious to see what these double smash loads actually weigh. The drivers really like it because once he smashes it, gets it tight in there, when they open the door, raise it up, it all slides right out instead of hanging up in there because it's so jagged. So that's going to work out well for us, I think. So we've spent about 1/4 of the budget for that, and we should have enough money to hopefully continue that throughout the rest of this summer or rest of this budget year. But the convenience centers, last week, like I said, was really busy. Luckily, the schools were out, so that gave us another driver, or actually 2 more drivers. The front loader drivers, when they finished with their school routes, they could jump in and help, and my mechanic and my truck foreman was in the trucks as well. We may wind up coming back for overtime money. I had some drivers this Sunday was the last day of the pay period. Had some drivers with almost 100 hours in the 2 weeks. So that's going to catch us pretty hard. Any questions on that?
We're going to lump these. How many more reports?
I've got a resolution that we need. Okay, we'll go ahead and do these.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and approve your reports then.
Okay.
Any questions for Mac on those 2 reports?
Motion to approve this report is presented.
Thank you. All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Mac.
TDOT offers litter grants to all the counties, and it's based on road miles and population. Our grant this year is $300 less than the one we currently have. Don't really know why. It's $112,900. We need to do the resolution to go through county commission to have this grant.
So this is for the, July 19 to June 2020.
Yes, sir.
And is this like an automatic deal, or do we have competition against?
They
this?
offer it to all 95 counties.
Okay.
Not all 95 of them take it. I don't understand why.
Okay.
But it's based on population and road miles.
All right. Fantastic.
It's a non-matching grant.
Yeah,
It is,
no county.
we have to spend the money,
Yeah.
but we will spend it every year. Our budget for that is well above that amount of money.
But we don't have to match.
We don't have to.
No, sir.
Yeah. We need a motion to accept that grant or resolution.
So moved.
All right, need a second. And a second. All those in favor? Please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Matt?
Speaking of that, we're also short a litter grant driver and a part-time driver. We've never been able to hire that part-time driver, but our driver's wife got a job that doubled her salary and moved to Chicago, so I can't quite blame them for that with the same company, so.
All right.
And that's all I really have. I handed out a piece of paper, it's just a thought starter is all that is, but there's no need discussing that yet.
So, okay, this is just a brain tease for us to be reviewing and
Yes, sir.
start the thought process?
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay. Anything else you'd like to chat about?
No, sir.
Mr. Mayor, anything?
Yeah, a couple things, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I think it would be good. My father always told me if we're standing still, you're actually sliding backwards. So this is, the landfill issue should be at the front of every month's agenda. And I'm suggesting that you give a monthly report, whatever, the mayor's office, the MAG, myself, anything else, we need to be given a report, part of the Public Works report to the full commission, just to let the public know what's happening. Want to extend an invitation this coming April 9th, next week, at 6:30 to 8 o'clock. Mr. Steve Barman has kind of put together and invited myself and the city mayor, Mayor McFarland, to come and discuss, kind of have a community-wide meeting about solid waste because of community. So this will be kind of a town hall meeting, our first on, and it was organized by the citizens and invited us to come and speak. So anybody that wants to come in, commissioners, please come out. So this will be kind of the kickoff of getting the community involved. So that's at 6:30 to 8 o'clock at Patterson Park on April 9th. I have a meeting this coming Friday, I believe, with Becky Caldwell. Is that correct, Becky? Becky's back here. She represents GNRC. She actually went with our group of mayors and other city officials with the county when we went to California. She's coming in with Jacqueline. How do you pronounce her last name?
Maltubi.
Maltubi. Okay, Maltubi. She is actually our representative from TDEC. So they're coming in and they're going to be sharing some things with us on a regional basis of what I know Mayor Briley, they were supposed to put out Metro's decision on what they're going to do with their solid waste, and it's supposed to be out this last month, and then they postponed it to May. Talking with Mac earlier, I think the numbers have come back larger than what they thought, and he's getting ready to get into an election and probably doesn't want to throw those numbers out at this point, so I'm not sure, he's kicking the can further down the road. But I guess as long as we can keep this momentum going and through the community town hall meetings, I'm bringing the mayors together. I think everybody, I think Mayor Cole, I think Brad out in Eagleville, Smyrna, Mary Esther, and of course our city mayor here, McFarland. We're all engaged. Maybe the first step is to come back to this committee and try to decide and make a recommendation. What's going to be the governance of how are we going to handle this from a governance standpoint? How do we decide, how do we engage Smyrna, Laverne, Eagleville, the city of Murfreesboro, and the county all together? What's going to be that structure? Is it the Solid Waste Authority? I don't know. Is it in order for them to have a seat at the table, there's got to be some kind of structure that we need to all agree upon, and how we're going to handle our waste. Maybe that's the first step. I don't know, but these questions that Mac has provided for you tonight are just to start thinking in that process. Thank you, Mac, for doing that. But we hopefully at every meeting, we'll keep coming back and saying, here's what we're doing, here's what, these are suggestions, throwing it out on the top of the table. I know that Republic is represented here tonight with Mr. Murphy. Let's start the dialogue with whoever. I've got a meeting there's a gentleman that I served with in the House of Representatives by the name of Judd Matheny. He's actually working with a company down in Manchester. They're doing, right off the interstate there in Manchester at the McMinnville exit, they're doing recycling. They're actually getting ready to take over Cannon County and some other county, but they've got like 6 or 7 counties right now that they're picking up and doing recycling down there. So he extended the invitation. The owner could not make the meeting this past week, but invited us down because his father passed away, but wants to come down and take a look at it. There's several options, but at least we're moving forward, and I'm excited about that opportunity. Do you have a comment? Mr. Blair?
Just that, and I think maybe you were going to take care of this, Mr. Chairman, but this April 9th meeting has been by a private citizen.
That's correct.
Maybe it would behoove us to have some meetings sponsored by our government over there.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah, that's in the works.
Okay.
It's in planning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Our discussion has been, we certainly want to interact with the public and get public input. We would like to be a little further down the road with eliminating some of the technologies and narrow it down to a handful that are affordable and make sense for our community, and then really open it up to public input at that point. It would kind of be chaos to talk about things in a broad scale right now, because there's certain technologies out there that just we absolutely couldn't afford, and would mean a regional conglomeration of partnerships.
Yes.
So we hope to narrow the field down to something that we can handle, we think would be the right choice, and then really bring the public in to get their input on those options.
I went and looked at the last sale that they're working on that you can see from County Road. How many feet do you think they put in it?
A bunch.
That's right. Time's drawing near.
I agree. I agree. I think about it every day.
It's drawing. It's drawing.
Do you have anything, Commissioner Rather?
Well, you know, this, I may not think about the landfill every day, but an email or a phone call reminds me, or I can smell it. And just this thought hit me the other day that if we meet 2-hour meeting just for the landfill every month, we've spent a 24-hour period at the end of the year talking about the landfill. And I'm not saying that we do this now, I'm just putting that thought, that perspective out there that at some point we may have to meet, you know, a couple times a month maybe, just to put that out there, because when I thought about it in that sense, I was like, goodness, we're going to spend 24 hours in an entire year talking about the landfill. I don't think that's enough.
Yeah, I totally agree. And there are discussions going on outside the Public Works Committee. And Mac's chatting with his counterpart with the city, because this is going to be some kind of a joint venture, it looks like. At least we're having that discussion. And there are a lot of things going on. And we've talked about making a small version of the committee we once had a couple of years ago, a manageable size committee where the stakeholders and community members will meet more often and brainstorm and chat about what the plan is. And like the mayor said, who's going to govern this? Is it going to be a solid waste committee or an authority? And how's the fee structure going to be? You know, there's a million things that have to be worked out. And you're right, it can't be done in 2 hours at a time.
Yeah.
So, like we chatted about at our last meeting, you know, how do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time, and that's what we're doing right now.
But before we get us a big chalkboard and a big piece of chalk and make that first mark on, you're not gaining any ground at all.
Yeah, you're right.
Talking about it, you know, we've been doing this for what, a year and a half, 2 years?
I agree. Yeah.
We're gonna have to make that first mark.
Yeah. I agree. All right.
Go done.
Mac, thank you very much. Anything else anybody would like to chat about? Old business, new business, other business, outstanding business?
Well, I just want to say thank you to the mayor for bringing up the updates every month, because there's just people that have no idea where we are, and that's where the speculation and assumptions and imaginations, and that causes a lot of problems. So I appreciate you bringing those updates.
Thank you.
Meeting adjourned.